If you would like to support the podcast and get some extra content while you're there, head on over to patreon.com/SevereMMA podcast and sign up. From the rewatch to the Q&A, we will have loads of content every week. So sign up, patreon.com/SevereMMA podcast. And now, here's the podcast. Welcome everybody. It's episode 354 of the Severe MMA podcast. My name is Sean Sheehan, joined today by the Jonathan Wilcox of Irish MMA Media, Graeme, as we talk about maybe the busiest week in the world of mixed martial arts. This past weekend we had Eagle FC, we had Bellator, we had UFC, ONE FC hit a card that completely flew under the radar. Next week we've Cage Warriors, we have the UFC, we probably have something else as well. I have about 20 tabs open here, so we've loads and loads and loads and loads and loads to get to. So tune in for the rest of this podcast because we've lots to talk about. Before we get into all the mixed martial arts, we must tell you that spring has sprung and our friends at Manscaped are the best tools for some spring cleaning in your pants. Trust me, your confidence will be blooming like the flowers this upcoming spring. Time to clear out that winter bush and join the other 4 million men worldwide who use and trust Manscaped. Use the promo code SevereMMA to get 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com. If you haven't heard of Manscaped, they're global leaders even in men's below the waist grooming, and they've forever changed the grooming game with their amazing performance package 4.0. Included in that is the 4.0 lawnmower trimmer. The also is the weed whacker, which trims your ear and nose hair, as well as the crop preserver ball deodorant, the crop toner reviver, the boxer briefs, and the travel bag as well. And that lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, they call it here, it's a pube assassin that is waterproof and equipped with an LED light, so you bet it's a major key to the new shower routine. The elite trimmer is designed to trim hair and loose skin. Although your balls might look like punching bags, don't treat them like ones. And I got too, like, I flew too close to the sun there. I forgot what I was reading. And it has the proprietary skin safe technology, so it's absolutely fantastic. That's fantastic. Have you ever met someone who finds nose hairs attractive? Absolutely fucking not. The Weed Whacker nose and ear hair trimmer provides that proprietary skin safe technology as well, which helps reduce nicks, snags and tugs in those delicate ear and nose holes. The crop preserver in, that's my favourite one. It's an anti-chafing ball deodorant and moisturiser. It's starting to get hot outside. Well, it's not here yet. Not yet, but it's close. It's close. A grand stretch in the evening, lads, so you'll need that soon. You'll also need the crop reviver halfway through the night. A little bit of a spray. Keep it going. Complete the grooming game this spring with your new... Or is that the... Yeah, no, it is the spray-on one. There's one that they have, and it's like a liquid. I think that's the first one. But yeah, the spray-on one, fantastic job altogether. They have the cologne as well, spray-on cologne. That's not part of the performance package 4.0, I don't think. Or maybe, I don't know. Look it up, manscaped.com. If you purchase now, you'll receive 2 free gifts, the performance boxer briefs and the shed travel bag as well. So smell good and feel good this spring. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code SevereMMA at manscaped.com. That's 20% off, free shipping, the code SevereMMA at manscaped.com. It's time to throw out your old hygiene habits and upgrade your life. Right, Graeme, let's get straight into it. So altogether, now usually if we know UFC London is coming up and Cage Warriors is coming up, I'd usually start with that. You know, that's our main thought and our main focus this week. But last night was, as the rain pours down outside, I don't know if you can hear that or not, but anyway, there's a storm brewing. Last night was such a crazy night in the world of mixed martial arts. It feels like we have to look back and talk a little bit about that first. So let's do that. The first one, I have to start with this: Burnell versus Adam Borics, the Bellator main event. Now, okay, first of all, apparently Bellator had a massive and brilliant undercard, but it was clashing with the UFC, so that's one issue. We talked about it last week. I talked about it in my Bellator preview as well. I would love if Bellator didn't do that, but apparently they had their card first, and also they couldn't be avoided. But at least the co-main event and the main event didn't clash, so it wasn't too bad. But a lot of people, I think, missed the undercard. Cody Law got a massive KO against James Adcock. Roman Fernaldo, one of their best up-and-comers, got a win there as well, as did Dynavix Diana even, and Romero Cotton got back as well. Apparently Alex Polizzi against Jose Augusta was one of the fights of the year, and one of their top prospects as well, JJ Wilson, ended up losing a unanimous decision there as well. Johnny Eblin, another guy who's 11-0 now, beat John Salter, and in the co-main event, Phil Davis beat Julius Anglickas. And he did what Phil Davis does. You know, he won the striking, took him down, and he won on the ground as well. Not the best, most entertaining fight in the world. But
surfing on top of his opponent on the ground.
Phil Davis. But that all paled into insignificance when we got to the main event, because Adam Borics and Mads Burnell, even, if you haven't seen this, go out of your way to see it. This was one of the best fights I've ever seen. Honestly, this was a brilliant fight from pillar to post. You got to like the fourth round in this one, and I was just thinking to myself, is this slowing down a bit? And I'm like, no, it's not. It's just got, to me, it's not that it got better and better. It's just it stayed good throughout the whole thing. All I could think of when I was watching this, and very little people were like tweeting about it between rounds or even in the middle of the first round. I was like, I need to tell people about this. It was like Forrest Griffin versus Stephen Bonner or something like this great fight going on. Everyone needs to hear about it and tune in. It was an absolute classic for the ages. I tweeted last night saying it was one of the best Bellator fights ever, and honestly I think it's up there with Chandler versus Alvarez, that classic fight, which I think was on the same night as Shogun versus Dan Henderson back in the day.
Well, there's two of those Alvarez and Chandler fights were brilliant, but this was brilliant. Like, you know, they both stood and traded, and I think Borics is kind of the more technical guy, and Burnell tried to kind of drag him into a dogfight and managed to do that at times. But Borics is like a snap on his punches, and his head movement, I think, was just on a slightly different level, which ended up winning him four out of 5 rounds on my card. But you know, these were very close rounds, and at any moment, you know, either guy could have went down. They were really, you know, hell for leather, laying it out on the line, and you know, it was a really good fight. I don't know if I'd agree with you, one of the best fights ever, but it's definitely a really, really entertaining fight.
I find it very hard to remember a fight that stayed that good for that long. Like, it was constant 5 rounds of entertainment, 5 rounds of action. There really wasn't, it wasn't like there was an ebb and flow to this fight. This was just flow. You know, it was just non-stop brilliant. That's why I think it's one of the best. I couldn't, like, after the fight,
you can't take your eyes off it, or you're going to miss it. Yeah. Potentially miss everything.
It was encapsulating. Like, it was a brilliant fight. Honestly, I can't say enough about it. And you know, I was kind of down a little bit in Bellator last night because they put on a clashing card, and then, you know, so I wasn't madly up for this, or like, you know, overblown or anything. I actually thought it would be a slower
caught you by
fight.
Surprise.
It did catch me by surprise. I couldn't believe it. But to your point there, actually, about Burnell, to talk more about the actual intricacies of the fight and stuff, as you kind of said there, he tried to kind of drag him into deep water and tire him out and use that pace, and you know, he's fighting like a juggernaut, and it felt like in the third round he was doing that because he landed a lot of body shots. He was coming on strong, and looked like Borics was kind of slowing down, but in the last like 90 seconds, maybe 2 minutes of that third round, Borics came back strong and he landed loads of shots. So much so that one judge actually scored it for him. Now, I think most people would give that to Burnell. He definitely had him hurt with body shots. But then Borics came on and won the last 2 rounds as well. I think the 5th was very, very close. But this, I knew Burnell was a very good fighter, and we've obviously talked up him an awful lot, considering we saw him in Cage Warriors and obviously saw him in the UFC now. We've seen Borics have, 18-1 now or something like that. We've seen him have a great career. But I felt like last night kind of proved what he is, or showed what he is. Like, this is a top fighter, and maybe I don't think people realise. Everyone knew he was good, and he's flying knees, beating Aaron Peak on everything like that. Everyone knows he's a good fighter, absolutely, but I don't think people realise that he was a world class fighter until last night. This was an unbelievable display of, as you said, skill with his fundamentals and his head movement, but cardio as well, and heart. Like, if you don't have the cardio, you're not going to go 5 rounds at that pace with Burnell. If you don't have the heart at that point in the third round when Burnell is starting to take over, no matter how good you are, no matter how good your cardio is, it will turn against you, and you'll end up not giving up, but the tide will end up turning and you won't be able to get it back. But he didn't let that happen. Such heart, such will to not kind of give up on any stage. And the same could be said for Burnell. You know, he was getting his fucking head bashed in for a lot of it, and not like it was uncompetitive or anything. But your man was landing these jabs and these fucking combinations over and over and over in Burnell, and he just kept coming. Even in the fourth round, he started fucking dancing. He started doing the robot in the middle of the fourth round, and then Borics answered it back as well. This honestly,
there was one stage where Borics, the second time he did it, he was actually in range, and Borics was just looking at him. He didn't even throw the punch, and then afterwards he kind of slipped a punch and did a little dance himself, and they kind of shook hands on it.
Honestly, this to me was an absolute instant classic. Love this fight so much. I think round one, there's actually another candidate for round of the year in the UFC. We'll get to that in a second, but I think round one, if you're talking about rounds of the year, that has to be it, because I tell you, after that round as well, it's like there's about 90 significant strikes each. How could you even score that round? Like, it was crazy. Like, also, can you ever remember a fight where one judge had it 50-45, and I don't agree with that, but it's not the worst card I've ever seen. So one judge had a 50-45, or even a 49-46, as I think most people had it, where the person who lost had so much success. Like, how many shots did Burnell? I can't think of a fight.
It's hard to think. Like, I the 50-45, I gave Burnell the third round, but as you said, he kind of nearly lost a round at the end of that round. So I don't think it's that egregious, or as you said, I think it's a perfectly acceptable card. But if you're just looking at the scorecards, you'd probably think Borics had it all his own way. But obviously, as you mentioned, this was back and forth and on a knife edge, and it felt that it could go either way at any moment. You know, razor close rounds, and you know, this is a fight that maybe we might get to see again down the line. And you know, I'd definitely be tuning in for that one.
Yeah, 100%. Like, my first thought after it was rematch. Like, honestly, it was. And especially, you know, if AJ McKee is fighting Patricio, if Patricio wins that and Borics is not next in line, I would love to see the rematch straight away, honestly. But that might be a little bit unfair on Borics. But yeah, what a fight. And I had to.
But Borics could also just. Caldwell is obviously the only loss on Darren Caldwell, the only loss on his record. I know he's on a bit of a skate at the moment, but he might want to get that back as well and kind of show that it was a bad day at the office or whatever. But I think, you know, depending on what happens with AJ McKee and Pitbull, obviously if they're going to rematch again, then I think either the Burnell rematch or the Caldwell rematch will be appropriate. If Burnell is injured or is not injured and can compete in a few months, then I'd lean that way. But you know, it'd be good to see those questions answered as well, because Caldwell is obviously a very good offensive wrestler.
Yeah, I don't think that'll happen. I don't think he's at that position anymore. I think Borics kind of moved past it. But maybe in the future, maybe I could see that happening. But yeah, what a fight. Had to start it with that. And a busy week for MMA. I had to single that out because it was such a great fight. And in actually, before we move to the UFC, One Championship had a couple of great fights as well. Gary Tonin got ground and pounded into absolute oblivion when he was going for one of his leg lock things. He's all jiu-jitsu. This whole jiu-jitsu is great, isn't it? They're all the best jiu-jitsu player in the world. And then fucking Tan Lee absolutely massacred him with massive ground and pound when he was going for a leg lock. Speaking of madness, John Lineker and Bibiano Fernandez went at it. Did you see this whole fight, Graeme? I
just saw the left hook finish.
Me too. John Lineker just went forward, as John Lineker does, and landed a massive left hook. Or Bibiano was actually going forward, and I don't know what. It was just madness. And John Lineker ended up catching him with an absolutely massive left hook and put him out there. One Championship in 2 weeks' time as well have a massive card coming up. They have like 5 title fights on it. They have that Demetrius Johnson versus Rotang fight coming up. Myself and Ian previewed that last week on the Chasing Pack, so if you haven't heard that, sign up over on patreon.com/SevereMMA podcast to hear that there. So it's One Championship getting back.
Aoki on that card as well.
Yeah, Stamp Fairfax against Andrea Lee. There's loads of stuff on that card. It's a massive card for him as well. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing
Angela Lee. Did you say Andrea Lee?
What did I see?
I think you said Andrea, but maybe you didn't. I'm not sure.
Yeah, Angela Lee. Sorry, yeah. Indeed. We had Eagle FC this weekend as well. The heavyweight championship was won by Rizan Kuniev. He beat Anthony Hamilton by a very weird looking standing guillotine choke. I'm like, well, I'd say Anthony Hamilton was delighted to get his check to turn up the bet for this one. It was one of those. Ray Borg won a very, very close split decision against Ricky Bandejas. That was a fantastic fight. Impa Kasangan ended up losing to Raymond Magomedliev. If anyone watched my preview show, I predicted that as well. But in the main event, Kevin Lee beat Diego Sanchez. But if you haven't seen this fight, this is a very, very, very close fight, I suppose. Yeah, you could say a very competitive fight. From the very first kick of the match, Diego Sanchez took the calf out from Kevin Lee. He just wild up, first kick, just whacked him right into the outside of the calf. You know, Conor McGregor versus Poirier style that time, and Kevin Lee just couldn't walk for the rest of the fight. Still ended up winning, did very well. Diego didn't maybe capitalise on the injury enough, but was very competitive. I thought Diego won the third round. Kevin Lee did knock him down at one stage, but I didn't think it was a massive knockdown, and Diego was absolutely boxing him up before that. And Diego landed some very good shots in the first round as well. Like, Kevin Lee did win, absolutely, but a card for Diego 29-28 is not the worst card in the world. Now, I don't think I was right. I think it was a 29-28 or 30-27 Kevin Lee. But this was a very, very, very good fight, a very, very competitive fight. Diego Sanchez in his new gym, I think he's in another gym in Albuquerque. I'm not 100% sure where he is, but he looks like he's real training partners and real coaches now, and he fought very well. You know, this is the best Diego Sanchez has fought in a long, long time. And we must remember as well, Diego's a legend of the game. He's no mug, you know, and people maybe overestimate sometimes where Diego is in his career. And okay, he's not spring chicken anymore, but this is a 40 fantastic now, performance. Yeah.
He's 40 now, but as you said, he looked really good. Obviously, the leg of Kevin Lee was a big factor in it, but he caused that. And as you said, maybe he didn't capitalise on it enough, but Kevin Lee adapted well and kind of did what he had to do to win. And you know, Diego put up a good fight, and it's good to see Diego, you know, in a better place, as you said, in a new gym, and looking like it's not a disaster waiting to happen like it looked like it might have been for the last couple of years. Yeah,
indeed it was, and it was very good. It was heartening to see it almost, because when this fight was announced, I think a lot of people, me included, but not as much maybe as other people, I thought it could be a disaster, it could be a bad beating, but you never know with Kevin Lee. But it's hard to criticise much from Kevin Lee, because it literally happened. The injury was caused by Diego, as you said. Full credit to Diego. It wasn't like, you know, it was unlucky or Kevin Lee fell and...
Yeah, he didn't step back or landed. He targeted a shot and landed perfectly and did the damage he wanted to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And credit to Diego, but credit to Kevin Lee as well for toughing it out and winning that bout. He's looking for... 160. It was at 165 pounds as well, and he's looking for a title there over at Eagle FC, which would be smart from them, I think.
Yeah.
A little bit of a differentiation between the other organisations, I think would be good. And Diego Sanchez looking for a couple more fights. Him versus Gilbert Melendez. I'd love to see that if Habib could sign Gilbert Melendez. I think that'd be great, but you never know. As I mentioned it last week, and we have to mention it again. You know, obviously with what's going on in Russia at the moment, you know, where's the money coming from this? Where are they paying all the money? You know, I doubt Habib is paying, you know, 200 grand or whatever it might be to pay all these fighters or whatever. So we'll see how long this keeps going. Hopefully for the fighters it keeps going, but you never know with the situation going on in Russia at the moment, because this is
hopefully these fighters get their checks as well.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah.
Or get their checks. Their checks don't bounce.
Yeah, they're clear. So yeah. It's you know, it's a mad one. And if you haven't heard, you know, we're probably thinking, oh, let's just discuss this more. I did a full podcast with Philip O'Connor talking about all this situation. It's up for free on Patreon right now, so if you haven't listened to it, you can find it on Facebook or Twitter, wherever it might be. A long discussion. One, like, I'm no expert or anything like that, but Philip is very, very good, and he kind of broke down what's going on and how we should be reacting to it, and the fact that we shouldn't really know how to react to it, to be honest, because it's a very, very different situation, and it's a very tough situation to know, you know, what to do. And even as we get to the UFC main event now, I saw Kareem Zidane putting up a thread about Magomed Ankalaev even, and like how he has worked with Kadyrov for so many years, and he's part of his fight team and all. And that's, you know, Kadyrov is one of the worst guys in the war at the moment. He's one of those, you know, the very staunch fucking I don't know what you call him, but one of the, you know, the henchmen of Putin, and plenty of henchmen himself as well, who's been at UFCs in the past and is, you know, America have like you know, have a not what would you say for he's wanted by America, let's put it like that. So yeah, it's weird to be watching these lads, and especially people as close to the top men as Ankalaev is compete, when we know what's going on in the world at the moment. We see Ukrainian fighters last week, you know, coming out after with very emotional speeches and everything like that. It's a very, very weird position we see ourselves in the moment in the world of sport, and it's not like we can just separate them, because Ankalaev hasn't separated himself, you know. That's part of the story. If we want to talk about stories in the sport, which we do all the time, that's one we have to mention as well. But yeah, as I said, if you haven't heard my podcast with Phil, please go and listen to that, because he explains it better than I could. So let's move on to the last night's UFC. This undercard was one of the best undercards of the, without a shadow of doubt, I think the best undercard of the year. Just madness after madness. It was a flying knee by Azamat Murkazanov at the very, very start. He came out in the third round, absolutely took the head off Tafon and Kuchi with a beautiful flying knee. Guido Canetti at 42 years of age had a standing TKO over Chris Matinho. I was a little bit surprised that Matinho was the favourite coming into this fight, which was a bit crazy to me, but Guido looked like he was injured throughout the whole fight. It was one of those weird fights where he was kept on like falling down and falling backwards and stuff, but landed big shots and was able to get a lovely finish. Standing stoppage. I thought it was good. I thought it was good timing by Chris Tognoni. I think he was taking too much damage, and I liked that stoppage. I thought it was very good. Cody Brundage then with a guillotine choke against Dacha Langiambula. Dacha was absolutely destroying him, mauling him. He was on the way to a 10-8 with, you know, it was a minute left in the round, so maybe not, but Brundage fell back on a guillotine. Dacha was so tired, I think that was part of it, but he ended up tapping to that guillotine. But a lovely finish for Brundage. Then there was a rear naked choke for Miranda Maverick, who absolutely decimated Sabina Mazo. Sabina almost got an armbar in the first round, but it wasn't to be. She got the
second round. She nearly got the armbar, maybe.
No, it was the first round, I think. You know,
I think she went for another one just before the finish. She went for another one, I think. Did she?
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, no. I don't think so. But yeah, rear naked choke anyway in the second round for Miranda Maverick, who was very, very good. Damon Jackson then got another finish. He got an arm triangle choke. Kirk would look very relaxed in his boxing, but too relaxed, you know, and Damon Jackson was landing the harder shots. Got a late takedown in the first round, and then got another one almost immediately in the second round. Absolutely destroying him. Then it was on the way to another 10-8. It looked like one of those ones, but he ended up getting the arm triangle choke. He almost had an arm triangle from the mount, or maybe the wrong side. Maybe he was on half guard on the wrong side or something like that, but then he ended up getting over into side control, got the arm triangle and got the finish there. So Damon Jackson, I was 20-4 in that division. He kind of half called out Edson Barboza, and that's not a bad fight. I wouldn't mind seeing that. Javid Basharat beat Trevin Jones and looked really good over 3 rounds. Our guy Harry Powell, talked about him. He's out in London shoot fighters, but training over in Vegas now, and his brother won last night over in Spain as well, I think. So a good fighting family there. JJ Aldrich, Ireland's own, won the unanimous decision over Gillian Robertson. A very, very good display again from JJ Aldrich. Matthew Simmelsberger, who had a great display in his opening UFC fight, got the win here. A lot of wrestling and stuff against AJ Fletcher. Not a classic, that one. Alex Pereira beat Bruno Silva. Then this was, Bruno Silva hit Alex Pereira a good few times.
Yeah, he wasn't afraid of him on the feet at all. He completely went for it, and he flustered Pereira at times. I thought Pereira did do enough to win, but all this hype of getting him up to the title shot against Adesanya. He knocked out Adesanya in kickboxing. I think we need to slow that roll massively after this fight.
Do we need to quicken it up before he is beaten by someone?
Well, before he's exposed. Yeah. Get him in there for Adesanya to eat him before he's exposed.
Yeah, I saw Keith Chilling over in Sherdog last night kind of saying that, and I don't disagree, honestly. Put him in there with someone like a Darren Till, right? If Till wins, it's a great win for Till. And if he knocks out Till, then you put him straight in there at a shot with Adesanya. You know, Adesanya's not going to be taken down. Yeah. You know, I think
he's 34 as well. Like, you know, he's no spring chicken.
Yeah, and that division is so bad that, like, and Adesanya has fought, you know, relatively often, that there aren't really many people like standing out. Okay, who's a Cannonier, and there's probably one or two, but if he got the title shot, maybe Pereira was next. You know, that would be. But look, but obviously we're not talking about meritocracy there. We're talking about promotion more than anything else. But that's the way the world works sometimes, and I don't think it'd be the stupidest thing in the world. But the UFC are not going to do that, because the UFC don't put 2 seconds thought into anything. But whatever. I mentioned earlier as well, one of the rounds of the year happened in this UFC card, and that was the next fight between Terence McKinney and Drew Dober. Terence McKinney just came out, balls to the wall, nearly KO'd Dober. He threw a knee, the first one missed, then he dropped him with a right hook, left hook, kind of just wild swinging John Lineker style. Then he hurt him with a big knee, but got tired, and Dober kind of slowed it down a little bit. He was able to recover. He got into the clinch, knocked him down with a knee in the middle of the cage from the clinch, then got on top and ended up getting the TKO. Let me just check how long this went. It felt like late in the round, but it was only 3:17. This was a classic.
Yeah, a lot happened.
All I could think of was Diaz versus Daly after this happened. It was a classic one rounder, wasn't it?
Yeah, Terence McKinney threw like a lot of different strikes. Looked absolutely, you know, ferocious and brilliant and early, and you know, like he has in his last few fights, and getting first round finishes. But Drew Dober just toughed it out, basically took his shots, and as you said, it was a noticeable probably 2 minutes in where Terence McKinney just looked exhausted, and that just seemed to give Drew Dober confidence. And once he kind of was over the storm of Terence McKinney, it did seem like Terence McKinney just kind of wilted, and at the end when he was getting ground and pounded, he was kind of covering up, and he had his legs in a position where he could have kind of kicked off and gave himself time, but he just seemed like he was exhausted and just decided, I'm not going to win here, and I'm finished. Yeah,
he took this on like 3 days notice as well, or weeks notice maybe. Maybe it was longer than 3 days, but he had just fought a couple of weeks ago as well. And look, we talked about it on one of the shows during the week, that like, and maybe it was a different fight actually, but these days you have to do things like that even if you lose, I think, because of the way UFC are matchmaking and because of the way Dana White is. I think you have to take chances these days just to stay in with the brass, just so you get kind of that push, and that the fans will know you as well. And I actually think, I saw Bilal Muhammad tweeting last night, his stock went up, and I actually think it did. I think people know him now more, and people respect him even more after that, despite the loss. Like, Drew Dober's a very, very, very good fighter. He called out Bobby Green after as well. I'd love to see that fight. I think that makes a lot of sense. You know, and he was a guy who was ranked until, you know, he came across Islam Makhachev and a few more as well, as we were talking about in the live preview show this week. So by no means a huge deterrent in the career of Terence McKinney. I think he'll be back, and he's so exciting and such a good fighter, so dangerous. I think he'll be one that everyone wants to tune
so
in
much
for.
talent. Like he showed that even in the 2 minutes of offense he put out, how many different strikes he threw, you know, the technique in the strikes, the pace. If he, like, you know, if he can put in proper camps and get his cardio up to where it needs to be, and, you know, round out some of his game, which you know, I'm sure he will. He's definitely a really exciting fighter, and even if he can't make it all the way to the top, you'd expect somebody with that excitement level and, you know, that kind of balls to the wall style to be a Dana White favourite and stick around for a long time either way.
Indeed, 100%. Khalil Roundtree then came out and he beat Carl Robertson the first round. You know, Khalil Roundtree went over to Thailand, remember, before, and he came back and he was fighting like a Thai fighter, and he fought a bit like a Thai fighter here, and that the first round was just waiting for the bets to come in, and in the second round he just banged it out in 25 seconds.
Well, even in the first round he was kind of crouched over as if he was like, I don't know, as if he was afraid of the takedown, even though he obviously, Carl Robertson isn't going to be going for any takedowns really. But yeah, he, you know, Khalil Roundtree, once he turned it on, it was vicious. You know, that body kick, the soccer kick to the body, kind of, it moved Robertson back like a yard into the fence. There was such force behind it, and at the time I was thinking, has he done that before? And then in the post-fight interview, he was like, "Oh, you'll probably remember from Tough. So I used to do that." I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, it makes sense."
And I saw some people like, "Oh, why don't people do that more often?" I think the reason they don't do it more often is they're afraid that the fighter will like move 1 inch and they'll kick him right in the fucking head. So like, I wouldn't blame people. What I would like to see more is when lads are in like side control and, you know, the big knees to the body are open, or even when they stand up kind of from side control and their opponent is still there to kick them in the body. Then I think the one's like aiming for the midriff when a lad is like half standing up, half kneel down, is a very dangerous shot to throw. But when it works well and when you can time it well, like Roundtree did here, it works beautifully. And it did, but he had him hurt before that. You know, he landed some very, very big shots. You know, he absolutely as you mentioned, crushed him to the body. But the right hand before the body shot and the right hand after the body shot were massive, and they were actually bigger than the body shot. So great stuff from Kayla Roundtree, a guy, you know, who turns up sometimes and doesn't turn up other times, and he kind of alluded to that even afterwards, talking about, you know, his issues with mentality and stuff, and, you know, a very interesting guy, and he seemed very, very emotional afterwards. So it'll be interesting to see what he does from here. Sadiq Youssef versus Alex Caceres is a very frustrating fight. It just feels like these two guys are better than they produce all the time, especially Youssef. Like, he's such a frustrating fighter. He's so good, but kind of leaves so much himself in there. I feel like, okay, he won this fight and he absolutely deserved to win it, mostly with his leg kicks and his power, but I just feel like there's so much more. I think Caceres had a good game plan at the start in terms of like going to make his jiu-jitsu matter in the fight. I think that was his way of winning, and, you know, he kind of set out to finish the fight, I think, from second one. But after the first round, he just really couldn't get it to the floor anymore, and he really had many opportunities to use his jiu-jitsu, and Youssef kind of just floated to the win here. It was, you know, a good performance, but I feel like Youssef is a brilliant fighter, kind of in waiting, you know? And there's just something. Do you feel that way as well, or am I off the mark? I think he definitely 60% of a fighter or something.
He definitely has a lot of talent and a lot of tools. I think maybe the fact that Alex Caceres was kind of grapple heavy, or his game plan seemed grapple heavy earlier, and he tried to take the back, even on the feet and things like that, that maybe Youssef was I better stay away from this. I can just kind of float to victory on the outside, as you kind of said. But you know, as you go up toward Alex Caceres, obviously he's a good guy. He's been around for a long time. He's a bit inconsistent, and he's definitely no world beater. So as Youssef steps up, you know, he's going to need to do a lot more. He's going to need to let his shots go more and kind of have more confidence in his ability and in himself, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It reminds me a little bit of Usman, you know, and they're good friends and countrymen and stuff as well. Remember, he was like, "Oh, I'm throwing at 70% of my ability," and things like that. It's like, that's so frustrating. Just throw at 100% of your ability. Let's see the real you. So hopefully we'll see that in the future. The real you is something we definitely saw with Song Yadong, who absolutely, you know, put Marlon Moraes to sleep. He's so quick and so powerful. Okay, Moraes, I think Spencer kind of called this. A lot of people are going to be saying, "Oh, it's the end of Moraes rather than the beginning of Yadong," but it's a bit of, look, it is definitely a bit of both, but Yadong is so good in this division, 19-6 now. He's on a great run, and he's not too far away from contention in that division. He called out Dominic Cruz, you know, Team Alpha Male guy calling out Dominic Cruz. It's not something we're unused to seeing, I suppose, but I'm a big fan of Song Yadong, and I'm looking forward to seeing where he goes. Would you like to see the Dominic Cruz fight? What do you think of Song?
Yeah, I thought Song looked really good. Obviously, Marlon Moraes is a dangerous guy offensively, maybe a bit chinny, but, you know, the combination, and especially that kind of right uppercut under the armpit that finished that put Moraes on his back was absolutely beautiful. You know, Yadong did everything he needed to do in there and looked really impressive, and continues to look really impressive. The Dominic Cruz fight, you know, I probably prefer, as a Dominic Cruz fan, not to see Dominic Cruz in there with Yadong Song. I suppose though the UFC are probably going to use somebody like Dominic Cruz to try and to build these guys up, and he's definitely a good test. Dominic Cruz offers something very different to nearly all fighters in the UFC and in that division. So it'd be a good test to overcome. But I think Dominic Cruz has lost a step. Obviously, so many injuries, so much inactivity over the years has been well documented. He's obviously got another job at the UFC now to take some of his time as well. So yeah, I'd expect Yadong to win that fight if it happened. But I wouldn't be too against it. But for Dominic Cruz, I'd probably, from his point of view, it's probably not a great fight to take.
Yeah, I'd still like to see it. I want to see Cruz versus Aldo, but I'd also like to see Song Yadong versus Aldo. I think that'd be a fucking fun fight. I wouldn't mind seeing that, but we'll
that'd be
see.
Great.
What about Sean O'Malley versus Song Yadong? I'd like to see that too, but I don't think O'Malley's taking that somehow. But we'll see what. Look, it's probably time for Marlon Moraes as well. He's taken too many heavy shots at this stage of his career. 33 fights in, he's been obviously a champion and things like that in World Series of Fighting.
Four knockouts in a row.
Yeah,
5 out of 6 knockouts. Yeah,
never great, but it felt like he was a fighter that kind of not wasted, but had a big part of his prime in World Series of Fighting. Okay, there was some good guys there, but a lot of nobodies, if we want to put it very abruptly.
I think he fought the best people he could, but the best people were, in the UFC. He tried to, Bollinger, Hill, Shayman Moraes. He tried to fight, he fought Josh Hill twice. He tried to fight the best he could, but, the talent just wasn't there in World Series of Fighting. And as you said, he kind of, maybe that was his prime, and he could have spent his prime in the UFC. But it's easy, as I always say, it's easy to be the general after the battle.
Indeed it is. And in the main event, Muhammad Ankalaev versus Thiago Santos. This was a very, very intriguing fight early, when Ankalaev was like the counter pressure fighter, as I always say, just like pushing forward, throwing, nothing, waiting for Thiago Santos to throw it and moving his head and landing counter shots. And he won the first round doing that. But it wasn't the most entertaining fight in the world. In the second round, nothing happened really throughout the whole round until late, till Santos landed that knockdown, and that kind of changed the whole fight. We had like 10 seconds of entertainment that made the fight even less entertaining for the rest of it. There was more output, I'll give you that, in the third round, but very little effective stuff, and I think Ankalaev just took it. In the fourth round, Santos started very fast but didn't seem to get tired, and then kind of
visibly like really tired all of a sudden.
And then kind of just for the rest of the fight, I've here in my notes got 8 apart, but that's not right. He just kind of got picked apart a little bit for the rest of the fight, and Ankalaev ended up getting the win. As you know, Ankalaev is a good fighter, and I know Harry was blowing him up and stuff, and he is. Look, it was a tough matchup because of how hard Santos hits and what happened at the end of the second round. But when you're in that position in the division and you're climbing towards the title fight, and there's lads like Jamahal Hill and even Prachka getting the fight next, and Anthony Smith and others coming through, I think you need to make more of a statement in a fight like that, and I don't think he did.
I think Thiago Santos is a really hard guy to look good against. Who's looked good against him? Glover looked good against him. Got the finish. But besides that, I think he's a very difficult guy to look good against. Obviously, John Jones maybe wasn't fighting at the top of his ability, and that was 2.5 years ago now. But when somebody's that powerful and that explosive and is just waiting, I think it is difficult to look good against him unless you're like a really powerful wrestler who can dominate him.
Yeah, it is very true. He is just because, look, he's a nightmare, because if he comes forward at you and lands a lot of big shots, it's very tough to defend that. And if he's countering you with his speed, it's very, very tough to defend that as well. And he's so powerful, but I don't think he is what he used to be. But at the same time, that's easy for me to say here, sitting in front of my brand new beautiful computer, and I'm not in there standing opposite him. But it is about fine margin at this level, and it is about becoming a star and pushing yourself to that next level in the division. And when your fight is up there being as boring as a Phil Davis light heavyweight fight, probably probably not the best thing. But however, like, this card was absolutely brilliant from the start. We had, like, it was one of the most exciting cards of the year, even up until the co-main event, you know, where we had that lovely uppercut win for Song Yadong and the madness of Khalil Roundtree and the madness of McKinney. There was a bit of a lull in the middle with the 4 decisions going from Basharat to Pereira, but the beginning of the card, the top, like, 90% of the card was very good in the main event, not great then as well, but don't take away from it, a very, very good card and a fantastic night in the world of mixed martial arts with the Bellator main event as well. So very good night in the world of mixed martial arts. Right, let's look forward to next weekend. I want to start with Cage Warriors because we have to give precedence in an Irish MMA podcast here to an Irish fighter in Paul Hughes fighting for the unified Cage Warriors featherweight title. You know, we had Borics versus Burnell, an all-European featherweight fight atop the Bellator card. Now we have an all-European featherweight fight atop the Cage Warriors card here. As I said, Hughes takes on Vucenic for the second time. I went back and I watched their first fight again this week, and I remember at the time remember we were doing like the live Zoom over on Patreon, and I kind of thought Vucenic won. I thought, looking back this time, I definitely thought Hughes won. I thought it was one of the very close fight, very, very close fight, but I would definitely have scored it for Hughes this time around looking at it, but that doesn't make any difference. We're coming into this one, they're both 8-1. They have that behind them. I think I did a preview with Brad, which will be out in Sherdog this week, and it was really fun talking through these fights, but I think both guys, Brad made the point to me on that both guys have fought Sharia, both guys have beaten Sharia, and both guys have gotten a little bit more confident and a little bit better since that first fight. It was a classic Cage Warriors fight, that first one. I don't think people realise how good it was, but looking back in it, such high level stuff. Like, I you know, for me anyway, you know a fight is high level, you know a fight is good, you know a lad is fighting well when you see him hit a switch like 2 or 3 times in the fight and do it so well. Like, I think the one thing as well, Paul Hughes showed an advantage in the grappling that doesn't exist anywhere else in the fight for either guy. I think they're very evenly matched on the feet. I think they're very evenly matched, even with you know, wrestling maybe, or even with their takedown defense, or even with their speed and head movement and everything like that. But when Hughes got the fight to the ground, he looked like he was on a slightly different level from Vucenic. He almost got the finish at the end of the first round, but I think going forward and going into the next fight, and look, just to clarify as well, like, I remember I criticised Hughes a little bit after that fight for saying maybe he didn't go for enough takedowns and tried to get the fight to the ground. He did in that third round in that fight, and Vucenic kind of stopped him a few times. So Vucenic's takedown defense is very, very good. I think it's going to be a close 5-round exciting fight here. If Hughes can get it to the ground a little bit more, I think that could be the difference. If he can use his power a little bit more, I think that could be the difference. But Vucenic's power as well, his technique, his fundamentals are really, really good. This is a fight, you know, there's some great fights in the UFC and everything as well, but I'm not as excited for any of them as I am for this fight. I cannot wait. What do you think of it, Graeme?
Yeah, obviously you mentioned the first fight being really close. I think, you know, the first round and the second round, first round was Hughes and the second round was Vucenic, and the third round is the one in dispute. And, you know, you can make arguments both ways. And I think this could be another fight where there's going to be rounds like that where people are, one guy's going to be calling it Hughes, one guy's going to be calling it Vucenic. And it's probably, yeah, you know, if anybody's going to finish it, it's probably more likely to be Hughes on the feet or with some kind of rear naked choke or something like that. But I see this being a real tit for tat, real razor close rounds. And yeah, I'd probably lean with Paul Hughes, but this is a very difficult fight for both guys. Obviously, we saw how kind of well matched they are in the first fight, and I think Hughes has a bit more room for growth and probably maybe will end up being the better fighter. But this fight is going to be razor close, I think.
Yeah, I think both guys will eventually end up in the UFC, and I think the winner of this will be in the UFC. So I don't think we'll be getting the trilogy if Hughes wins here, because these guys are too good not to end up there. I really, really, really rate Vucenic. You know, it'd be easy for us to just wax lyrical about Paul Hughes here being an Irish MMA podcast, and we have done that, and we shall do that again. But Vucenic is a very, 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 very good fighter as well, and this is a very even matchup. Like that featherweight division, Charrier is a very good fighter as well, and obviously we had Burnell in this division up until not too long ago, and you know, Hughes called him out a couple of times as well. So this, you know, the featherweight division around Europe is unbelievable, and these two, I cannot see anything but a classic fight here, unless, you know, maybe there's an early finish or something like that, but I don't know. I think they're so evenly matched up. I think it's going to go long. You know, as you said, Graeme, maybe if Hughes gets it to the ground, could get a choke or something like that, but it's an interesting one, and I absolutely cannot wait for it. It's a fun fight. Fun fight Friday. It's on Friday night before the UFC on Saturday, so a couple of early nights.
seven fight card as well, which is absolutely brilliant.
Is that all? No, it's more than that, is it? Yeah,
on Topology, it's only a 7.
Okay. Yeah. So yes. So the fight, Steve Amiable was supposed to fight James Hinden, and Tobias Harila was supposed to fight Jeremy Peatley. Peatley pulled out. Amiable pulled out, so Hinden is now fighting Harila, and that's a fantastic fight. Really good fight.
Decky McAleenan was meant to be fighting Dan Collins on this fight as well, so there's been a lot of fights fall apart.
Decky is fighting though. He is fighting Paul McBain on that card. I don't know if that's breaking news or not, but that fight is happening. He is fighting Paul McBain. That's a step up, you know, from the fight against Dan Collins. So that's a big fight there for Decky as well, and that'll put him right into title contention, I think, if he wins that. So, you know, I don't know if it's officially yet, but that fight is happening, unless something happened to it. But yeah, like for Decky as well, like Decky hasn't had the best time over the last while, after being like on the verge of title contention. He drew with Kieran Lister, there's no shame in that, but then he lost obviously Stevie McIntosh last time out, got rear naked choked after beating Adam Ventura. But Decky's been around for a good bit, and you know, with the title fights keep falling out here in this division, and Decky is a guy who just keeps showing up. You know, he's not a guy who really pulls out of fights or anything like that, and he will fight in short notice.
He'll bring it as well. Yeah, so like it's important for him to get a win here to kind of, you know, be in that discussion for a replacement fight. You know, if he's coming off 2 losses, it's kind of hard to justify it. But if he's a guy who's lost 1 in the last few, then coming off a nice victory, a guy who always brings it, you know, he could see himself catapulted into contention if there's a late pullout. But it's also important to get a win to kind of build himself back up towards the title shot either way.
And George Hardwick was supposed to fight for the title, and a couple of opponents pulled out on him. He's fighting Luis Copera on this at 161 pounds. I don't think Copera is the best fighter in the world, to be honest, but he's very tough. I've watched a couple of his fights. Hardwick, a really good fighter on the inside who throws bombs, but is good on the ground as well. Will take you down if needs be. You know, the king of Middlesbrough there, so I'm looking forward to seeing that one. I mentioned as well briefly the Hinden versus Harila fight came together last minute. Harila, if you haven't seen him, he's a guy who just comes out, goes forward like an absolute mad lad. He ended up losing his last fight to William Gomez, who kind of danced around him and picked him off from the outside, but Hinden won't do that. Hinden will be going straight forward, trying to land bombs as well, trying to get big takedowns, so that's a very interesting fight. Will Curry at 185 pounds, he lost a couple of times to Christian Leroy Duncan, who's fighting for the title coming up at the next Cage Warriors, or maybe 2 Cage Warriors down the road. They're both on the same weekend, so one of those cards.
Will Curry versus Patrick Valet of Cage contender Paul Daly getting knocked out fame.
Indeed, yeah, he's been around for a long time. I think he made his debut in 2003 or something like that, so a good test for a young up-and-comer like Curry, who's an absolute beast of an athlete. So it'll be interesting to see if he can I know he won his last fight, I think, but he bounced back after a couple of losses to Christian Leroy Duncan, the first of which was a weird one. 2 up-and-comers then, Nick Bagley against Ben Ellis. Very good wrestlers, both of them are, but very good, well-rounded fighters as well. Very good fight. Kingsley Crawford versus Aidan James. Love that. Linnea Kavanagh against Ryan Morgan kicks off that card as well. A really good card. A lot of up-and-comers, a lot of good up-and-comers, but that kind of picturesque main event as well for Cage Warriors. It feels like an old school Cage Warriors card, getting away from the trilogy for a little bit, so I'm really looking forward to this card, and that main event is it's spicy, so I can't wait. Let's do it. And obviously a big night for Irish MMA as well, with Paul Hughes fighting for a title. A big weekend over in London. Volkov versus Aspinall, which I assume is still happening, is the main event. You know, people are asking Dana White last week. I don't know if they were asking him last night. I don't think he was there in the press conference. Maybe I'm mistaken, but he kept saying, "Yeah, look, that fight is happening. If it doesn't, we'll find a replacement." So it's I assume it's still happening, but it's one of those ones, right, where I look through the card, and maybe because we're not sure if the main event is happening, but I think even outside of that, I'm interested in almost everything apart from the main event. Look, I'm interested in the main event, but I just feel like I feel like Hooker versus Allen is the real main event here and should be the main event, but I don't know. They put Volkov versus Aspinall in there. How do you see that fight going? What do you think of would you have had Allen and Hooker as the main event? What way would you do?
Yeah, well, I think Arnold Allen, to the hardcore fans or to people like me and you, we know how good he is, and you know the guys he's beaten and how good he's looked and the skills he has. But in terms of people who, you know, main eventing a card, maybe he doesn't have the name value that a Volkov, like a heavyweight fight always has a bit more draw to it in terms of casual fans, I think, in the UFC's mind anyway. But you know, if you had to put Arnold Allen versus Dan Hooker there, I would have had no problem with it. Even, you know, Paddy Pimblett headlining the card, maybe against somebody with a bigger name than Vargas, could have done it as well. So there's some very, very good fights on this card, as you said. Obviously, Gunnar Nelson making his comeback as well. We'll probably go into that. But maybe because Arnold Allen's flying under the radar a lot, maybe due to injuries and inactivity, and maybe not being a brash character or doing a lot of interviews saying clickbaity things and things like that. But in terms of his skill level, the skill level of the fight, the quality of the fight, Allen versus Hooker, I think, yeah, it definitely on merit it should be main event. But all those other factors mean that it probably, the right decision not to make it.
I don't know. I think people know Hooker and know how exciting he is too as a fighter. I think it would have been fine, to be honest. And you know, it's hardcore going to these cards as well, I think, and they're selling out when they come to London, especially considering they haven't been there in so long as well. So I don't know. I see what you mean. I definitely see what you mean, but I would have put that as the main event. But however, let's talk a little bit about both of those fights, like Aspinall versus Volkov. We've kind of both talked about maybe slowing the roll for Aspinall a little bit, but when you go in there in these last couple of fights and you beat, you know, the likes of Arlovsky and Spivak, considering where they are in the division now, you kind of have to be given a tougher fight. He was supposed to fight Shamil Abdurrahimov. I think that fight didn't end up happening, so they're giving the main event here. Actually, he was supposed to fight Shamil Abdurrahimov in the main event here, and that fight didn't end up happening. But Volkov is a tough matchup for him. I think he's long, he's rangy, so his boxing is very good. He's only lost to Cyril Gagnon in his last 4, beating Overeem and beating Tibura, and you know,
like I think when Volkov was kind of on the rise in Bellator, he was basically just a striker, and if you get to him grappling wise, it was kind of, you could shut him down. But I think he's developed and become, you know, pretty well rounded. Obviously, his striking is his go to, but his grappling has improved a lot. But I just think Aspinall, he's gonna have as long as he can maybe weather a little bit of an early storm. Not that Volkov's known for a storm, but you know, just kind of feel him out early and then get a hold of him and make it difficult for Volkov. And I think, you know, as I said, Volkov is definitely improved as a well-rounded fighter, but I think Aspinall should have enough everywhere here, as long as he doesn't really let Volkov get into his flow too much. But it definitely is a step up, you know. As you said, me and you over the past couple of years have been, you know, talking about how good Aspinall is, but not wanting to see him get in there too fast. But as you said, the win over Arlovsky looks better as Arlovsky keeps winning, and Spivak's the win over Spivak looks better after last weekend. So, you know, with the pull out and stuff like that, I suppose it kind of is the right matchup to make. But if Aspinall can go in there and beat Volkov, then he's kind of stuck in an even higher echelon and has to maybe, you know, fight the likes of Cyril Gane soon. So yeah, maybe it's you know, undue concern, and he's ready for all this, and he's gonna go in there and absolutely smash Volkov and look great, and you know, go on to be a legit challenger for the title in the next couple of fights. But you know, if you're trying to make sure you build this guy, then it is a bit of a risk. But as we always say, the UFC matchmakers these days don't really seem to have long-term plans for these guys. So it's probably likely that if he goes in there and looks good against Volkov, that he'll be in title contention in the next fight. I
think he will, yeah. And I think he should be. If you beat Volkov, you are right there, to be fair. But I think if you do beat Volkov, I think you're probably ready as well. Like there's only so much you can slow it down. And I don't necessarily like this matchup. I would have liked to have seen him getting the likes of Abdurrahimov or something like that. that. They did try to put that together, so we can't criticize him too much, I suppose. But yeah, I would have liked to have seen one before this and then move him on to that. But you see with Gagnon, you see with Francis over the last years, they have been doing, especially the heavyweight division, when you have a talent, you're going to like run through a lot of these guys and get to a level. And this is the level now where you get to, if you win this fight, you're automatically vaulted into that upper type of level. Like maybe he'll be meeting a Derek Lewis or someone like that after this, and you know, we know what happens when you meet Derek Lewis. You're right in there. But having said all that, that's more about like what we think, and more about like the matchmaking side of it. Aspinall's a very good fighter. You know, he's really good hands. He hits very, very hard. Crisp everywhere it goes. Like if this fight stays on the feet, as you said, I agree with you said, it's not going to be a storm that he has to stop early. But what he does have to do, I think, is deal with the length and deal with what Volkov actually brings and how good defensively I think he is as well. If he can kind of get inside or find ways to hit Volkov, even if it is a few leg kicks and a few like quick combinations to get inside, I think from that point on, it'll be Aspinall's fight to win. But that's not easy to do against Volkov by any means. So I'm looking forward to seeing how he can do that and the tactics he brings into the fight. And for Volkov, look, you just need to stay long. You need to stay away from that as well. And maybe throw in a few takedowns and maybe push him against the cage and test him over 5 rounds. So it'll be very, very interesting to see how that goes. But that fight previously mentioned, Arnold Allen versus Dan Hooker. Like, watching a few of Arnold Allen's fights last night, especially, you know, we mentioned Sadiq Youssef earlier on, and watch back that fight. Arnold Allen is one of the most underrated fighters in the UFC, honestly. His wrestling is good, his jiu-jitsu is good, he hits hard. I think people underestimate how hard he is. 17-1 now in his career. Like, he is as strong as an ox too. Sadiq Youssef is a very, very strong fighter. And there was at one stage, Allen just like bodied him to the ground. Just not embarrassing, but you know, from a strength point of view, he just was a different level. And you know, I know isn't Arnold Allen's father like a strongman or something? So he has good breeding there, I suppose, and he'd be able to help him get strong. But he is so strong and such a good fighter. The one thing I would say, very noticeable, right? His head is very much down and it's like tucked in. But against someone like a Dan Hooker, who throws that knee down through the middle, I think Arnold Allen could be a little bit open for that knee if Hooker comes through the middle with it. So that go on, what were you going to say there?
I was just laughing about that. Yeah.
But yeah, this is a really intriguing fight. Like, the one thing I suppose we don't know about Allen is at this very, very top level, he's fought some good guys, don't get me wrong, but at this top level, if he is dragged into a war, it's a pity this is only 3 5-minute rounds as well. I would love to have seen 5 rounds for this one, and that's another reason why I wanted it to be main event. But if Hooker does draw him into a war, if he can't like finish him, and it is going to be a bit of a back and forth, we'll see where Arnold Allen can race to at this sort of level, because we know Hooker can do it. Look, he's fought some good guys like Melendez and like Lintz and Youssef and, you know, Burnell, beating Burnell and Americani and others, but I think this is a different bit of a level, isn't it?
Yeah, well, as you kind of hinted at there, Hooker's definitely been fighting the higher level of competition recently, but you know, it hasn't been going his way. And confidence is another thing, and momentum, and you know, your mindset is a big thing as well. And it's going to be a hostile crowd as well. I know Dan Hooker's been in some big fights and stuff as well, but he probably won't be as confident going into this as maybe he would have been if he had fought on Arnold Allen maybe after he beat Iaquinta or he beat Felder. So that's definitely going to play a factor as well. And I think, as you said, Arnold Allen he's just flying under the radar in terms of everything, in terms of his ability, his striking, his wrestling, his grappling, his finishing ability. You know, like I haven't seen the odds yet, but I'm expecting Hooker to be a favorite here, but I'd be going with Arnold Allen to win this.
I would tend to agree. What were we going to say there?
I think, you know, this is going to be his kind of coming out party. This is going to be where people actually finally recognize how good Arnold Allen is, and you know, the potential he has to actually, you know, challenge all the way towards the top or up to the top. And you know,
I agree.
If he can kind of, you know, obviously staying injury free is been difficult for him, and the momentum's kind of been broken a few times. But every time he's come in, he's just looked like he's developed. He's been putting the work in the gym clearly, and I expect him to look even better than he's looked before again here. And with Hooker, I think maybe he's probably closer to his peak ability than than Allen, but I still think Allen should get it done here, and maybe it'll be a decision, but I think it'll be a pretty clear decision.
I think Allen should go across the cage, pick him up and put him on his arse straight away. And it's easier said than done against Hooker, who's, he's good takedown defense and all, but we have seen him taken on before. And I think Allen would save himself a lot of undue hassle if he just did that. Use that strength. Pick him up, put him down. I know Allen, Hooker has been up at 155 for a lot of his recent career, and he's used to fighting big, strong guys, but I think that'd be a good way to go for Aaron Allen. And if he did that, I could see him maybe getting the finish there, land a lot of ground. He's very good ground and pound as well. I can't stress how good Arnold Allen is, and this is going to be a good fight, because Dan Hooker's no mug either. Okay, you said, Graeme, he's lost a lot of his fights against top upper echelon fighters, and he absolutely has, but he also has been in there against them, and he's given tough matchups to a lot of them, beat Felder and others as well. So really great matchup, a fantastic matchmaking. I'm looking forward to seeing it. What I also think is fantastic matchmaking is Rodrigo Vargas versus Paddy Pimblett. I watched a couple of Rodrigo Vargas's fights, or one of them anyway, that was on Fight Pass. He's not very good, I don't think, which is exactly what Paddy Pimblett needs, I think, in his homecoming in a big UFC fight. Vargas is not the fastest striker in the world, doesn't have great takedown defense, and I think that's the typical type of matchup that Paddy Pimblett needs. I think, it'll be interesting to see.
Paddy could go in there and try and strike and try and show off a little, but what he should do is go in there and take the back as quickly as he can, or get the takedown as quickly as he can, and put this guy away and get back in there fresh. Don't take any chances on the feet. Obviously his striking has developed a lot over the years, but his jiu-jitsu is just completely on another level to Vargas's, and he should take the path of least resistance here and get a really easy first round submission, in my opinion.
Talk a little bit about Paddy Pimblett, because I've spoken about him a good bit over the last while since he's gone into the UFC, and obviously we've seen him throughout his whole career basically. To me, I saw someone tweeting the other day saying, Paddy Pimblett's not just a striker with a good chin. It's yeah, he's not a striker with a good chin. I think Paddy's jiu-jitsu and his ground game is absolutely fantastic. I think his offensive striking has improved no end over the last few fights. Defensively, it's going to be a massive issue, and he needs massive strides if he's going to make an impression in this 155-pound division. Tell us what do you think about Paddy, and do you think it is possible for him to rise and become a champion in that division, or become a contender in that division? What does it need?
Well, I think this division is obviously it's a difficult division, stacked division, and there's some absolute killers at the top of the division. But I think Paddy's still developing. It's easy to forget that he's still only 27. He's been around for obviously a long time on the Cage Warrior scene and all that stuff. And we've kind of watched his career and watched him grow from kind of just a grappler to a well-rounded fighter. And we've over the years, he's kind of, his head maybe hasn't been in the game as much as it should. He's been, off partying in Spain and all these places, and not really taking his weight and his training outside of camp too seriously from the things you hear and things like that. He'd probably tell you himself. He wasn't really all in. The distractions were getting to him at times, and bad weight cuts affected him in fights and things like that. And as long as he can keep his head in the game and keep developing, and the UFC look like they're going to give him every chance in terms of the matchups to kind of build himself up in the UFC, I think he can cause a lot of trouble for a lot of people if on the ground especially. But when you get to the very upper echelon, I think, of that division, you're looking at some of the names. You look at some of the names Dan Hooker's fought. It's very difficult at the top there. I think he'd have to show us a lot more than he's shown us so far for us to be talking about that.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said there, and he'll need massive strides, and hopefully, I know he's paid pretty well from Cage Warriors, but hopefully maybe if he is getting a little bit of extra money and he's working for Barstool now as well, hopefully invest that into his training. I know he's been over in America before doing a bit of training and things like that. It's not just enough to be a very, very, good personality or a good fighter. If you want to get to that level, you need to be a great fighter, and you need to become a great fighter. And Paddy Pimblett is 20 fights into his career as well. And I know he's young, but this is not something that you were going to wait 5 or 6 years to see. This needs to happen now. You know, Paddy needs to improve massively right now if he wants to become a champion or a top ranked fighter in that division. And I'm looking forward to seeing what improvements he's made. And this is a good fight maybe to show what he's good at. Maybe not a great fight to show his improvements, because I don't think it's going to be that even of a matchup, to be honest. But I think it's good matchmaking from the UFC. I think they're right to give a showcase for Paddy. I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Like, I think I always look forward to Paddy's fights. He always brings entertainment. There's always, so it's a little bit more excitement than most fights. So, you know, it's definitely one to look forward to. But as you said, you know, he needs to go out there, win impressively here, and, you know, not go on a big party holiday or whatever that maybe he's done in the past. He needs to get straight back into the gym and, you know, take this as seriously as you need to take to beat the likes of the top 10 in the 155 pound division.
Absolutely.
And if he does knuckle down and do that and put everything into it and, you know, leave no stone unturned, you know, maybe he could be one of these guys that in a couple of years is challenging for the title. But you know, I just have a little bit of trepidation in saying that, just because of historically with the things you hear and stuff like that. But we've seen fighters turn around before, and you know, if Paddy wants this enough, you know, is willing to dedicate himself to it, then it's a different story. But I'd just be unsure. I think obviously I love a Paddy fight.
Me too, and I think it'd be great if that happened. I don't think it will, to be honest, but I hope it does. I hope Paddy Pimblett becomes a champion. I hope he becomes, you know, the fighter which I think from a young age people thought he could become. I don't think he's become that yet, but there's still time. As I said, he's still young, and he 20 fights is 20 fights. But
he's beaten some good guys, like, you know, without maybe being as dedicated as his opponents were. So he definitely has a lot of talent. There's no doubt about that.
Undoubtedly. Gunnar Nelson in versus Takeshi Sato. I know you mentioned it. Look, we all know what Gunnar Nelson is. Comes out with his kind of sideways karate stance. Not the best wrestling in the world, but unbelievable jiu-jitsu when it gets to the ground. Takeshi Sato fights in a very similar way on the feet. He has that kind of sideways stance that Gunnar Nelson has, obviously fighting out of the southpaw position rather than Gunny, and is more of a counter striker, but I think it's a pretty good matchup for Gunny. Although watching his fight with Bilal Muhammad, Bilal took him down a couple of times, but he was able to get back up and get to the feet. But if you look at his last 3 losses, three of his last 4 losses, Bilal submitted him and 2 others submitted him as well. So I'm sure Gunny will be looking at that. This is a short notice fight as well. First Sato, Gunny was supposed to fight against Claudio Silva. So Sato comes here on short notice. I know you've known Gunny for a long time, seen him fight in the early days, obviously training out of SPG. Good to see Gunny back, isn't it?
Yeah, it's great to see Gunny back. As you mentioned there, he's been out a while, you know, nearly 2.5 years, or about 2.5 years since that unanimous decision loss to Gilbert Burns. And before that, he obviously lost that split decision that probably should have been a unanimous decision for Leon Edwards. So his last win was Cowboy Oliveira, like 3.5 years ago. But, you know, in terms of the style matchup, if Gunnar's, you know, anything like he was before, he's probably going to, you know, stay on the feet for a little bit, try and land that left hand, and when the opportunity presents itself, try to get that takedown, take the back, put the body triangle on, land those kind of wrist shots that he likes to throw, and probably get a easy enough rear naked choke. I expect that to happen as long as, you know, Gunnar's gotten over the injuries that kept him out and all that stuff, and I expect he has, and I haven't heard any different or anything like that. So yeah, I think, as you mentioned, it's a nice style matchup for a return fight after a bit of inactivity and injuries and things like that. And obviously a 2-fight losing skid against top guys like Leon Edwards and Gilbert Burns is nothing to be ashamed of, and this is a big step down in competition and compared to those. So yeah, I expect Gunnar to go in there and strike for a little bit, and once he gets the opportunity for a takedown, I think that'll be curtains.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I think it's going to be an interesting fight on the feet, though. I think, as I mentioned, the styles matchup, I think it's fun on the feet. But yeah, I think if Gunny can get the fight to the ground, I think with anyone,
yeah, sometimes Gunnar is a bit too happy to stay on the feet when the opportunity, when the grappling discrepancy is big in his favor. But yeah, you know, if he goes in there and fights with a good game plan, it should be an easy night's work.
I don't know about too easy to Sato's good, but yeah, I think if he with the right game plan, yeah, I would agree. looking at the rest of this card, look, we're going to do a live preview of this. I think Wednesday night over on our YouTube and on Twitter and stuff as well. So if you're, I think we're doing it about 11 on Wednesday night. But if you're not up for that, you can catch it in the morning. The replay will be up on SevereMMA.com. We're going to go into all of these fights, but we have to mention a couple more here before we leave you. Paul Craig against Nikita Krylov. You know, we talked earlier about the Ankalaev fight. Paul Craig has beaten Ankalaev. Paul Craig has beaten Jamal Hill. If he wins this, like, Paul Craig should be in that discussion at the top of that division. Okay, you know, Paul Craig might be the sexiest fighter in the world. You might think of him straight away.
He might be losing 4 minutes and 59 seconds of the round and, you know, finish somebody with a triangle in the last second. You know, he's always dangerous and he's always in the fight, no matter how kind of one-sided the fight has been up until that point. He's proved it time and time again against guys who he's expected to lose against and who I can't exactly remember, but I probably picked him to lose against. So he's definitely a dangerous guy throughout the fight.
Like, if you look at his record over the last few, he's beaten Moreira, that great fight to draw with Shogun, beaten Antagulov, beaten Shogun in the rematch, beaten Jamal Hill in the last one. If he beats Krylov here, you know, you can't deny Paul Craig anymore. And look, Paul Craig is not the most well-rounded fighter in the world, although I think his striking has improved an awful lot. But when you have the ability to finish someone the way Craig has, and we've seen Krylov before is not exactly fucking Khabib Nurmagomedov on the ground. If Paul Craig can get it there, I could see another triangular armbar or something here. So I'm really looking forward to that, and that's a name you have to be thinking of here. You know, we were talking about possible main events. I think that could have been a main event as well, and especially like if they go back to Glasgow, maybe I would love to see Paul Craig on that card in a big fight if he wins here. So you know, have to shout out Paul Craig there. I'm really looking forward to seeing that fight. Few other fights to mention. Look, Molly McCann, it's always a big fight for Molly in that 125 pound division, because if she can put a few together, I'd say they'd love to put Molly into a title fight. So Luina Carolina, you know, she's 8-2, a good fighter, but I think Molly, you know, Molly rises when she has the home crowd with her, and I think that's a big fight for her there against Carolina. Molly has won, you know, she won the last one after losing 2 in a row, and this is a big fight for her. Carolina's won the last 2 in a row as well. She beat Lupi Godinez. I know people probably remember that. Lupi took that one in short notice, if I'm not mistaken. But Lupi's very, very good, and losing and beating her is a good win. But yeah, it's a big fight for Molly, and I'm looking forward to seeing that. Jack Shore on short notice is fighting Timur Valiev as well, 15-0. Jack Shore, we all know he's like really good wrestling, really good striking, well-rounded. In that 135 pound division as well, he's rising through, and Valiev is a very, very good test for him. You know, 18-2 in his career now. He's beaten Hani Barsalas last time out, who I believe is a very, very, very good fighter. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Jack Shore deals with him, because, you know, he's a well-rounded guy as well. He won't be that easy to wrestle Valiev, so I'm looking forward to seeing where that goes. A few more as well. Mike Grundy versus Makwan Amirkhani, kind of, it's like a Bama fight or something like that. I love that fight. Mohamed Makayev is making his UFC debut here against Cody Durden. Tell us about Makayev. He's arguably, I don't even think arguably, he is the greatest amateur in the history of the sport.
What was he, 22-0 according to the Topology, and there could be a few missing there, and that's in, you know, IMMAF competition. Most of those fights, especially the later ones, are against good guys. You know, it's not as if he went in there and just crushed cans or anything like that. He went in there against all comers in the IMMAFs, and, you know, won pretty handily in all of his fights, and he's made a really good start to his pro career. He's been very busy. Obviously went in there and got a rear naked choke finish over Blaine O'Driscoll, who we know very well, and is a really hard fighter. And, you know, you may be looking at his record as a pro and thinking, 5-0, he's one of these guys the UFC has just signed to stick on a card. But this guy is definitely a prospect for the future, a huge prospect. He's a nightmare matchup for everybody who's fought so far. So, you know, obviously the competition that he's fought in recent fights and throughout his amateur career isn't up to the standard of the top guys in the UFC, but he's very young. I think he's 20-21 still. You know, the sky's the limit for this guy. Really, really experienced guy. He's really experienced at 21. You know, the sky's the limit for this guy, really.
Yeah, and like he beat Blaine O'Driscoll in his last fight. You know, Blaine O'Driscoll is a really, really, really good fighter, and it was an entertaining fight as well. Blaine was doing well early, but Makayev, you know, his striking is improving, his wrestling is disgustingly good. So, and I look, he's a guy with a lot of scope to improve as well, as you said, very young in age, but young in his career as well. Okay, he's all those amateur fights, but not many pro fights, you know, and there's a lot to come from him. You know, even some Irish guys he's beaten in the amateurs, like Kieran Mulholland and Abnu Fares as well, you know, beating Liam Gittings as an amateur. So he's some good experience against good guys there, and I'm really, really looking forward to seeing Mohammed Makayev here. Corey McKenna as well is fighting Elise Reed. She is, you know, someone who a lot of people are talking about as being a top prospect coming through in that 120 or 115 pound division. Even beat Kay Hansen last time out. She lost one of the very early fights in her career in Cage Warriors, but bounced back, you know, and is 1-0 in the UFC, and has won one in the Contender Series as well. So very a good homecoming fight, I suppose, in Britain for her. I know she's Welsh, so it's not necessarily a homecoming fight, but Nathaniel Wood then against Vince Morales. Nathaniel was he's supposed to fight Ludovic Shonalin, I think. He's taking this on short notice. Ludovic is from the Ukraine, so he's decided to stay there and fight. Do you see the UFC put out travel issues have stopped Ludovic from coming when he decided to stay in the Ukraine and fight? Like, travel issues? Are you fucking serious? But anyway, Vince Morales steps in on short notice to fight Nathaniel Wood. He's coming off of 2 wins, you know, Draco Rodriguez even, and Luis Smolka, who's a very, very, very good fighter. You know, he's beaten Eamon Zahabi as well. Okay, he's lost a few fights, lost to Song Yadong and a few others as well. But this guy is a good fighter and a good test for Nathaniel Wood, so looking forward to seeing that. But for me, the biggest fight on the undercard is Jai Herbert versus Ilia Topuria. What a fucking fight this is. Jai Herbert, I don't know what Jai Herbert has done to people to deserve this fucking matchmaking, but he's got the toughest matchmaking, I think, of anyone to ever start their UFC career. It's been nightmarish for him. But anyway, Topuria, someone pointed out to me the other day, right? When I think of this fight, I think, Topuria has a big advantage. Topuria's coming up to 155 from 145 for this on relatively short notice. Not that short notice. But he fought Brian Bouland at 135 pounds in Cage Warriors only, 3 years ago or something like that. You know, Jai Herbert hits very hard. Jai Herbert's not the smallest 155er in the world.
He's a long guy,
yeah. It's an interesting fight. Like, you'd think Topuria would probably be favoured here, but Jai Herbert is not without a chance, is he?
Yeah, I think Jai Herbert's probably going to be the underdog here, but I think, you know, maybe because of how hard he's been matched in the UFC. We've talked about it over the years, how good he is, and we've obviously seen him a lot in Cage Warriors, and he had obviously a very tough start. Trinaldo and Moicano losing both of those in his UFC debut and his second fight, but you know, he came in and looked good against Worthy, so. He broke the losing streak, and you know, he's expected to go out here and lose again. But as you said, he's going to be the longer guy if he can use his jab, use his length, slow Topuria down, maybe with some leg kicks. It's definitely a difficult matchup for him, but he definitely has methods of victory here. But I probably would lean Topuria in fairness.
Yeah, I probably just would as well. I think more Jai Herbert can kind of turn into a boxing match and use his power. It'll be fun, but yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I cannot wait for that. And this whole card, this whole weekend is, it's going to be exciting. I'm really, really looking forward to it. So yeah, we'll leave it there. Actually, I must say as well, the Irish amateur team got to the finals of the MMA Super Cup, and obviously the lads over in the Old Triangle will cover that more in depth, but have to give a shout out to them. They did a great job there. They ended up losing in the finals, Graeme. I don't know if you heard about this or not, to the Bahrain team, who have only 2 fighters from Bahrain on their team, and lots of others
given citizenship to a bunch of Russian fighter apparently.
Yeah. I didn't realise that until yesterday. The lads were kind of pointing it out. I'm sure they'll talk about that more in the Old Triangle, but it feels like the old Bahrainians just decided to make a tournament for themselves where they could win. Now the Russian team weren't there, obviously. For obvious reasons, some, you know, and they have an unbelievable amateur team. So if they were there, maybe they would have won. Same goes for Ukraine, who have a very good amateur team as well. But yeah, I don't like that. I don't like have absolutely, if you want a Bahrainian team with all young amateur Bahrainians, no problem. And okay, they'll probably say, well, look, they have passports now, but yeah, you gave them passport fucking last week and they gave them a load of money to train. But yeah, that left a bit of a sour taste in my mouth. But for the Irish team, I think they've got 75 grand now. Hopefully they use that right. Hopefully they put it into the right hands and, you know, use it for travel, use it for training, use it for kit and different things like that. I think it'll be it's a great windfall for them, and it's great to have it with, you know, the backdrop of Bahrain and look, we've talked about all of that before, and we talked about it with Phil as well, about what, you know, the politics of sports these days is mad. But look, that is a longer discussion for another day, which I suppose that discussion kind of has been had this week on SevereMMA anyway. So, but great for the Irish team and great to get to the final. And unfortunately, they lost in the final, but however, these things happen in MMA, Graeme. Right? Have we anything else? Did I forget anything? I feel like, what's your take on the Cain Velasquez situation? Actually, we haven't mentioned that in the main podcast. I mentioned the Q&A.
Yeah. It's hard to know without all the details being out, but from what's been reported, it's obviously it's a horrible situation. You can definitely comprehend or understand Cain Velasquez's anger and stuff like that. But yeah, it's a, you know, a stupid thing to do, because he's going to end up in trouble now, and it's even worse for his family. It's just a horrible situation all around, and if the reports are to be believed, and it'll probably all come out in the future, there's going to be court cases and things like that. But yeah, it's just a tragic situation all around, I think.
Yeah, I think you put it extremely well. I think everyone feels the exact same. It's like you absolutely have sympathy for him and him having that anger and him wanting to take it out, if like the justice system or not, which I don't know if that's the case or not, but if it seems like that's why he was getting mad. And yeah, it's a terribly unfortunate situation. The fact that two other people that weren't the guy that was allegedly abusing his family member were caught up in it as well, that's the big issue here, I think. Like if it was just the guy himself and Cain Velasquez fucking shot him or assaulted him or whatever, I think he'd say, look, I did what I did, let me take my punishment, I'll take my time behind bars or whatever it might be. And you know, that's noble in a way, as stupid in a way, as you said. But look, as Dana White says, everyone says they'd do it if that happened to them. Cain Velasquez did it. So it's one of those situations that it's just so sad on every level. And look, I wish the best for Cain Velasquez, and hopefully there's some sort of resolution. But he's definitely going to be spending some time. He already has spent some time behind bars, but he'll be spending more time there by the looks of it. So, you know, very, very, very unfortunate for Cain Velasquez and his family as well. Kayla Harrison, Graeme, she's signed back on a multi-year deal with PFL, which to me, look, I think the multi-year deal is probably because Bellator agreed to deal with her and then PFL matched that deal. I would hope she won't be there for multi-years in PFL. I would hope the UFC can get something done if Amanda Nunes gets back to winning ways. Or look, maybe Chris Cyborg will come over to PFL. I think she's only 1 or 2 fights left. I think 1 fight left in her deal. She's fighting Arlene Blinko coming up in Hawaii. But you never know with the Champions Clause. I don't know if Bellator have that or what's the crack. So it's hard to know with Chris Cyborg as well. You hear a lot of stuff from Chris. But what do you think? It's just disappointing, isn't it, that Kayla Harrison is stuck in PFL for another few years?
Yeah, it is disappointing. It probably is what you said. It probably is a contract matching situation, and PFL are obviously going to try and keep a hold of her for obvious reasons. But in terms of for us and the fights we want to see, you know, maybe we will get the Cyborg fight. Maybe Cyborg will go to PFL, but I doubt that, to be honest. You know, Cyborg's not really. I don't think she's in the mindset of I need to go out and fight the best girls I can around the world. She's just happy to fight for Bellator at this stage, I think. So yeah, I hopefully something will change, but yeah, it's disappointing.
Indeed. An update as well from Sinead Kavanagh. I think she needs surgery after her injury, unfortunately, so she'll be out for a few months, I would say. I think she's getting that in 2 weeks' time or something like that, to start the next month. So best wishes to Sinead, and looking forward to seeing her back as well. And you know, It's I don't mean to end it in a low ebb, but yeah, look, it was a great weekend in the world of mixed martial arts, and next week as well is going to be a fantastic week as well. So yeah, if you want to sign up for our Patreon, patreon.com/SevereMMA podcast. We put a lot of work into it. There's a lot of stuff coming there as well. So I have a great interview with Crooklyn. We reminisce on the old days of MMA. I really enjoyed it. She has a great story about Kimbo Slice as well, which is worth the $5 alone to tune into that for. So if you want to do that, please do it. But other than that, we will leave it there, Graeme. Thank you very much for joining me. Thanks to everybody for listening. Please click that subscribe button here. It's free. Click the like, share it. Tag us at Sean Sheehanbia, at Severe MMA, and at SevereMMA pod as well. We'll see you all next time, everybody. Graeme, any post podcast inspirational quote for us? Have you got one? Do you have it? Go on.
I have a Morrissey lyric.
Yes.
We may be hidden by rags, but we've something they'll never have. Good luck. Good luck.
I was expecting something else. What do we have? Oh, okay, we leave it there. Good luck, everyone. Bye.